Hello out there, folks. Today we're going to be talking about this 2004 film directed by Walter Salles called The Motorcycle Diaries, starring Gael Garcia Bernal and Rodrigo de la Serna, who, incidentally, Rodrigo de la Serna is actually distantly related to Che, I believe. So it's kind of an interesting little connective tissue there. Now, the film, of course, is based on Che Guevara's Motorcycle Diaries, which actually had never been, they were discovered rather in a knapsack in Cuba many years after his death, and were published in '93. So that's why the book came out shortly thereafter, the Che, the Motorcycle Diaries rather, and then of course the definitive Alpha and Omega biography on Che by, I believe, Anderson came out shortly after that. But yeah, Che went through a bit of a renaissance in the 90s as a consequence of this discovery. And, you know, he's certainly a very interesting character, a flawed person, but there's undeniably some real passion and impact that Ernesto left on the world. And I like to think of him as someone who lived, had the courage of his convictions, however flawed they may have been. And I certainly think that at least early in his years, when he began to sort of find his voice and become ultimately the revolutionary that we all know, there's a genesis, a core to his character that I think is very noble. It's just the means that he chose to achieve those ends arguably were really brutal and certainly not something that I can get on board with. But I think his concern for the plight of the indigenous population, for example, in South America and Latin America, and really throughout the world, and his concern for the state of public health, especially in many of the countries that you see in this film, The Motorcycle Diaries, is undeniable. There's an incredibly hard subsistence, hand-to-mouth living going on, and he, of course, had a medical degree from Buenos Aires, Argentina. Came from a wealthy family, and just before he was to graduate, he went on this motorcycle tour around the entire South American continent. At least that's what his plan was. He actually left Argentina, went down around Chile and up along the west coast of South America, and ended up getting waylaid at some point. Didn't actually go completely around, but it was an incredible journey, and one that was depicted with just an incredible amount of care and verisimilitude in this film. I think Gael Garcia Bernal does a terrific job playing Ernesto, and you really do see sort of the evolution of his thoughts in this film. And I believe that the real Alberto, who was of course his sidekick, because he went on that motorcycle journey with his best friend, who was a biologist, he traveled the South American continent and saw so many things that disturbed him, that really impacted him. And it was during that period that he began to sort of take on ideas that would later be formed more concretely when he got alongside Fidel Castro with the Cuban Revolution. And again, I'm not advocating his means in any way, shape, or form. I'm a pacifist. But I think, again, his ideals, there were some brilliant ideas in there about basically improving the state of public health, improving the state of education, and moving beyond just consumerism that I think ring true today. And again, this movie just does a terrific job at depicting that. I really enjoyed the film. The score is beautiful. And what's interesting is I believe the composer didn't actually see a frame of the film. He only read the screenplay, or the composer only read the screenplay and wrote that beautiful music just by their impression from the words on the page. And it really fits the film. I can't recommend it enough. I think this is just a terrific film, and it pairs nicely with the Che biopic that Steven Soderbergh did in the late aughts. So on that note, The Motorcycle Diaries, directed by Walter Salles, came out in 2004. If you've seen it, revisit it. It holds up. And if you've not, I highly recommend sitting down for a watch. I think in particular you see just how believable Gael Garcia Bernal was in the role. I mean, I often think, who played Che better, Gael or Benicio del Toro? And I would say it's a tie. I think both do terrific work in their respective films. So on that note, please take care out there, everyone. Stay safe, be kind, and keep watching cinema.